from the previous lecture, we gained some understanding on what it takes to have this nice unicorn level growth, the strategic situations that we need to take into account in terms of how the ecosystem will be affected and if the function is new or old. One thing that we need to do to realize this is to become the fuel of our own growth engine. The growth model that we have, it relies on us working very hard and very, very focused on creating this business growth, selling more and more and more. So that's the business growth, right? That's what we want to have. But, to repeat from last time, we also have the organizational growth, and we want to keep that to a minimum. Now, keeping that to a minimum, that's the default position. Maybe we want to employ people for enabling other parts of our strategy and so on. So, it's not like we hate people and we don't want to hire anybody. But in terms of the principle for driving growth, having a large impact and so on, it's better if we can scale value without scaling up the organization too much. If we can automatize things, if we can put many activities into a platform that either performs it for us or connects others that perform it, maybe millions of customers, they help us giving a good service by recommending and reviewing products and services that are offered on our platform, for example. It's much, much more resource efficient. But business growth will most of the time require also the organization to grow. You can try to get as much growth in business as possible out from growth in the organization, but this curve, it cannot be straight up. Still, we will have growth, and actually growth has consequences. Business growth has consequences, and I studied this in the fast-growing firm in Stockholm. So they were renting out students for temporary help services. So they had sort of a crowdsourced their product and very, very lean. So they grow a lot in business, not so much in organization. But when they grow in business, some of their client accounts became quite large. They started to be concerned with quality and they became aware of risks and so on. So business growth has consequences that you need to manage. Handling organizational growth is more on, keeping it to a minimum, but then you have to also deal with the consequences. And in the early phases, the firm is young and small. Usually we start with ourselves or maybe a little group of people that know each other and have the same passion, the same vision. And at this stage is not so useful to implement formal structures and procedures. First of all, we are usually still exploring and trying to find the best way to realize our value proposition, and we're tweaking also the value proposition, setting up the business model, trying that out. So we don't know exactly what the formal structures are supposed to drive in terms of a production machinery that will be generating a lot of business growth. It's more about having a mindset and a vision, a passion. And this will over time be embedded into a culture. And the growth hunger needs to be a part of that culture. We should be hungry for growth, and that should be in the culture of the company if we want to have a chance for a global impact from our innovation. That's for sure. And the more you can embed in culture the desired behavior from your company and the coworkers, the better. Culture has a strong impact on behavior, and the stronger and more constructive culture we have, the less we need to check that people do the right thing and measure the outcomes all the time. And strong culture reduces the need for other control systems. And it also doesn't cost anything. It's more a matter of thinking about and describing early on what culture do we want to have and build that from the key success factors for our company to achieve the growth that we want to achieve. Because then we know how we will work with communication, reward systems, and what to measure. All those things can reinforce or destroy a constructive culture. And it will make this company a place to work for really good people, very talented, hardworking people. Because the better people you have, the less controls and checkups and formalia you need also. But culture is not sufficient, especially when you become more people. So what happens is that with organizational growth, complexity increases. And if you have one person, it's easy, right? I only have to coordinate myself. So there's no confusion. I do everything, and what I don't do doesn't get done. If you're two persons, you have one bidirectional communication line. So I do this, you do that. We can agree, we talk, and we can adjust. That's called mutual adjustments. So we don't both go to the same customer for the same reason. My colleague goes, and I do the other thing. And even if you're three people, okay, so how many lines of communication do you have with three people? Yeah, you have three. So two more are added. And now I have to keep track of what my colleague is doing and what I'm doing, but also the third person. And we are the fourth person. How many communication channels is that adding? Yeah, 3. So the fourth person adds 3, fifth person adds 4, sixth person adds 5. So the number of interactions grow exponentially. And what tends to happen now, it becomes a bit difficult for me to do my job while also understanding what everybody else is doing all the time. It becomes complex. Maybe I cannot see all the time, so I need to talk to them. And did you actually do that so I can do this? The dependencies between the work that I do and what the others do needs to be managed. And typically a firm grows to 6 people, 7 people, then it starts to be a bit messy, a lot of conflicts and misunderstandings. 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe if the founder manager is really good and can support and organize these mutual adjustments fairly well, you can come up to 12. But then people usually at that level, 10, 12, maybe 8 people, some start to quit. They leave the company because there's so much chaos and confusion. Okay, so the other alternative now is to formalize. And same amount of people in a simple hierarchy, well, instead of 15 interactions for 6 people, we have 5 interactions if there is someone that they can coordinate against. And this is a simple hierarchy, but if you're 30 people, maybe you have 2 layers of management. So hierarchies are very useful in terms of organizing activities when you're working a lot of people together. Hierarchies can also be oppressive. And that's not what we are after here. We are after things working well and keeping good information flows. Hierarchies occur because we're specifying the roles. So I'm formally responsible for sales and you're formally responsible for customer support. Then I don't have to guess what you're doing. And I will not have a severe conflict because I thought you were not in customer service, not support, and so on and so forth. In the early stages, it's the existing survival of the firm. It's like, that's what it is all about. So we need cash. That's critical. And the owner's ability to do things is really also critical. And the organization is really minimal to non-existent. When the business model seemed to work and customers realize that there's a value in what we're doing and we start to be able to deliver more and more, it's critical that the owner manager disengages with being part in the production and the operation and becomes the real manager. Because delegation becomes important. Because we need more people. We have the organizational growth happening. And we start to form departments and we have integrating mechanisms like meetings information systems, managers, specialist roles like product owners in integrator between marketing and technology development, for example. We start to form a basic organization with the departmental structures. We can even become a bit bigger with divisions, departments, staff, functions. And the clear structures is then even more important, because otherwise the complexity would be just enormous. There would be so many different things that could vary between roles. When it comes to fast growth, it seems that firms that are good at growing fast, they have an ability to formalize things early. So instead of formalize as a response to problems, they're proactive in formalization, and they also formalize for a much larger organization than they are now. Formalize for something that is, at the end of where you think you can get funding to grow. Formalize for that level right away, because otherwise you run into a crisis and then respond to that. So just build the way so you don't have so many crises that you need to anyway formalize to get over and expand beyond. So linked to delegation is the control systems, which is basically systems that implement leadership without the person standing there in physical presence, and implementing the execution of the strategy without us having to take every activity and explain it. We have to make it happen automatically. So let's look at the control system in more detail. So we have this organization where we have all the people and their behavior. When the desired behavior is not likely to come naturally, we create a control system. And we need to create a set of control systems that don't create opposing forces, of course. So we need to find a mix, and the mix should increase the likelihood that the behavior is as desired for realizing a strategy. There are some tools that we can use. So these are culture we talked about. Culture is cheap in terms of economic cost, but it's the most difficult one to change if you get it wrong, or if you have a culture that worked early on but doesn't work for the bigger company. And training is a bit expensive, but if I train, I'd be better at doing it, and it decreases the likelihood for a mistake. It's really useful because it helps people both being able to do things better and being more motivated. While these are, measuring how well we performed, and maybe we reward the best performers, or we have team rewards, which is a group-based rewards, a very good way to support culture. But measurement and rewards and so on, especially measurement, I think is the first step. We notice after a while that, okay, this process is not giving the outcome it used to do, or maybe there's more problems than we would like. Well, I go in there and we do an investigation and see if we can work on the process or the tools or the training of the people. And routines, processes, rules and so on, that's more on the actions themselves. Some actions are forbidden, some are okay. And these are very intrusive because they force you to do things in a certain way. You can have checklists, keys, right? So the control systems are trying to help us solve 3 problems that make less desired behaviors more likely. So one is the lack of direction. We can solve that by measurements, because measurement communicates what's important. We can solve that by how we as leaders engage in our role models and so on. Okay, then we have lack of motivation, means that I don't want to do it. I know what I'm supposed to do, but I don't feel motivated. It's easier for me to do something else, and the consequences are not discouraging me. So maybe we measure how much I sell and I get like a kickback on that. Then I might be more motivated. So yeah, the rewards are critical here. And the third one is personal limitations. So maybe I'm not able to do it. I know what I'm supposed to do. I really want to, but I don't have the skills or knowledge or capabilities.
And as we can see, different mechanisms are working here on different problems. Interestingly enough, training is working on all three control problems. So that's a good one. Sometimes we talk about hiring for attitude, a cultural fit basically, and train for skills. So that might be pretty good in the early growth, especially in the company and beyond that. And these type of controls that affect the people, culture training, also selection, that's called people controls. And better people means less problems. Try to make systems that are proactive rather than reactive. So yeah, these orange ones are proactive. They address the premise of action. The blue ones here are reactive. Enabling rather than limiting. So measurement systems are actually surprisingly enabling because you can have freedom. If you're followed up on the results, you can be given freedom on how to do it. Training, sometimes routines and processes can enable you to respond to customers without having to talk to other people or your boss or checking and so on. If they're formulated the right way, it enables you to be self-sufficient, active, and responsive, flexible. And it should be simplifying rather than complicating. So, we've all been in situations where we have a lot of rules to follow and forms to fill in and permissions to ask. It's really not, feels like something that makes our life easier. But if we can do that, it's better. So with a little bit of luck, we can have the arrows realigned so they're more from A to B, and together we have the collective activity of our organization move towards our strategic goals.